Class, I'm glad to see you. As I sit here in the comfort of our room, I'm afraid you'll probably be carried back to the days of 9 o'clock class at Chandler. I think that our neighbor is using this beautiful weather to chop down some trees, and I hear his saw and all this other stuff. So Dr. Justice is out there with him. So it'll be just like old home week, won't it, when we can hear weed whackers and lawn equipment out in the yard as I try to talk. What I want to do today is I'm going to try and experiment with a picture. And if you're seeing me, you'll know that it didn't work. But I have some things that I want to talk to you about in a relatively short video presentation here. Then we're going to come back. I will do another one, which will be a little bit longer in length, where we get up close to where we want to talk to about the beginning of the Tudor era, which is what so many of you are waiting for. I first want to I hope that you were able to get through the written lecture. I think that that's just an easy way, and I've done this for years when some difficult parts or detailed parts I've gone through just step by step. And as a matter of fact, if you would like me to, I was thinking about this. I have one in here for the material that we're covering now. It's a chronology that I've given to my class over the years just to get them through some of this material because it is kind of dense and we're covering a lot of time in a short period of study. So today what I want to do in this short video is I just want to go back and give you some information about the Black Prince and about the Order of the Garter. And this is such an interesting time. Good King Edward III, and I will always confuse my Edwards and my Henrys, and I apologize for that. I hope I don't drive you nuts with that. And our dogs are barking, so I have a cat in here also that might just walk across the screen, so who knows what you'll see in here today. But Edward had a prince known as the Black Prince, and he would have, had he lived to become king in his own right, he would have become Edward IV. He will, as so many warriors did in this era, ignominiously succumb to what was called then dysentery. And dysentery could have been dysentery, it could have been some intestinal malady taken from germs on a terrible battlefield or behind the field conditions. It could have been some other abdominal malady. It could have been food poisoning. It could have been appendicitis. It could have been anything on that order that had to do with an abdominal issue. So, but instead of dying on the battlefield, he will die this way, and that's very sad. But Edward, Prince Edward, son of Edward III, himself a great king, Prince Edward was known as the Black Prince, and he is referred to in literature. He's lived on perhaps even more famously than his famous father. He is typically referred to as the Black Prince because he had a black suit of armor. His sword and shield may have been black or darker in the way they looked. He's been some have claimed that he was called the Black Prince because of his fearlessness and brutality on the battlefield, but I tend not to go along with that one because there were others who were just as fierce and brave on the field, and that would have been given that would have been a good thing instead of a bad thing. For even though, as you and I have talked about so many times, even though these men see themselves as wielding their swords for the causes of Christ and the chivalric code, they nevertheless were as brutal as their Roman forefathers. So, our cultural forefathers, anyway. But I want to give you some information. This is in your text, and I encourage you to read this about the Black Prince. And you might even consider him as someone, if you're still looking for last minute lives. You might think about the Black Prince or the Order of the Garter as um, a great topic. But Edward the Fourth, who would have been Edward the Fourth, Prince Edward, our Black Prince, was formidable on the battlefield, needless to say, and one of his most famous battles was the Battle of Crecy. And it's here where he has this encounter that he takes with him. And again, this is in your book. Fighting for the French and with the French on this battlefield was the blind king of Bohemia. He was old. He had seen, figuratively and literally, he had seen better days. But he wanted to fight, and he asked to be taken to the front lines, where his knights took him, and he is killed on the battlefield. This is a blind king. Bohemia was in today what I call Czechoslovakia. It's a Czech Republic. He was more Germanic than anything else in the way he fought, and he just felt that he was fighting with the French, fighting with those who had the right cause. And he died on the battlefield. And our black prince rather found him and found his body and took the 3 ostrich feathers that were in the slain king's helmet, and he adopted them as his own crest, as part of his own crest, as a tribute to the king's bravery. And this is a great gesture out of this era. We are at the height of Arthurian chivalry. We really, really are. And you're going to see that go forward. Really, we can't say that certainly of Richard III, but this is going to go forward as the marching orders, as the gosh, what can I say? As the pattern that the kings are seeking. So this is just part of that. He will take the king's motto, "I serve," and this is King John the Blind, King of Bohemia. This is his motto, his crest, these 3 ostrich feathers, and the king, the Prince of Wales, which is a title that the Black Prince will have, will carry those, as well as the Duke of Cornwall, which will be a title that the Black Prince will be given as well. The king, the prince is the King of England, his oldest son, as you know, the Prince of Wales, will also have this title, the Duke of Cornwall. And a lot of that comes from these early days. We talked about the first Prince of Wales. That title will be reasserted to the Black Prince. He will be the Prince of Wales, the Duke of Cornwall. William, who is now the Duke of Cambridge, and I will get in trouble if I'm not careful, but he will be the Prince of Wales and the Duke of Cornwall once his father becomes the King of England. So these are time-honored titles that it's fascinating to me to see how they emerge in these heroic times. But the Black Prince is Edward. He would have been Edward IV. There's a lot to his character. I think he represents so much this era, the best and, yes, the most fierce of this era as well. And I want to give you a little information also about the Order of the Garter. And this is very, very interesting. I think at this time, we're dealing in the 14th century, the 1300s. This is a time when chivalry is dying on the continent. This is a time when the Black Plague has ripped the souls out of so many, out of the culture. The church is terrified. We see the rise of bastard feudalism, which is an unhappy and and an unfortunate term that applies to the fact that European knights are now dying out and being replaced by men who wield their sword for whoever pays the highest for it. And fortunately, that trend has not made its way to England as yet. And you still have knights who are cut in the Arthur tradition, who are fighting for king and country and church. And it's a great time when things are the very worst in Europe. In England, that hasn't crossed the channel yet. So the Order of the Garter, I think, is such an interesting term. And let me give you a little bit of information, if I can, for you. But King, I want to give this to you. This is more about King Edward than the Black Prince at this point. At the Battle of Crecy, Edward had laid siege to the city of Calais, and that is going to be the last holdout for England, really, until the time of Mary Tudor, and we've mentioned that before. The leadership of the town had offered their lives if Edward would just spare the people, so which is quite a noble gesture. Edward replied that he would do that only if they would come out naked. They would surrender naked, and bringing their own robes from which they would be hanged. Edward's wife, Queen Philippa, was with him, and she said, please don't do that. Don't do that. Don't give them such a terrible end. Think of the ability of your own character. Don't do something like that. Edward agreed to her request and polished his own armor a bit as a result. And that sort of led up to him, our King Edward III, rededicating himself to a more noble character and a more noble way of reigning. And he wanted to create a fellowship of knights. Yes, Arthurian, surely. A fellowship of knights to celebrate this character, to work on this character. And he will create and confer and what we might think of as an award or a title, and it's called the Order of the Garter. And there would be at any given time 24 or 25 men who would be conferred with this title, and they would serve with the king, dedicated to him. So there would be the king and these knights who have been conferred upon with this title. And it would be, if you knew someone that had that title, you knew that they were expected to be men not only of ferocity on the battlefield, but men who had a nobility of character, not just title, but character. And the Order of the Garter really is a fellowship of character, of knights who are trying to recreate what they thought Arthur and his knights had. So the first to receive this was the Black Prince himself, and it remains today the highest honor bestowed by the king. I feel as if when Europe was going to cede, when the continent was going to cede, when the continent was unfortunately giving over to the terrible times that England was holding what she wanted to be close. So unfortunately, there'll be some rough times coming. But in any case, this is what I want you to know. A couple of things. Let me give you some information. Make sure you read the chapter on King Edward III. Please, as I indicated in an email to you all today, please watch. You can acquire Kenneth Branagh's Henry V, made in 1989. I think it's the best of the best. It is one of my very favorite movies. It's in my top five. I show it every year. I believe that Dr. Nunley has shown it in one of her courses, so I know maybe at least one of you has seen that with her. This is the best of the best. And there's some things in there that are hard to understand. Uh, Henry V was apparently sort of a rascally youth, wild, and no one ever thought he would amount to anything. And Shakespeare alludes to that. And you'll see some characters in there that you're kind of, as you go back, you go, what's going on? These sort of seedy characters with whom the young king hung around in these wilder days. And what comes out is, and it's hard for me to follow them, and I don't really like those characters, but will Henry be a true king, or will he show favoritism to this sort of rough group of old compatriots? So you see France portrayed as arrogant and self-assured when they really shouldn't be. You see the king and his men as sort of a group of underrated, unsure warriors. And you have the great St. Crispin's Day speech. And I hope you will watch this. You can get it on Vudu, V-U-D-U, V-U-D-U, yes, I think, which is Walmart, and it's like $7 to buy it, 4 to rent it. I would urge you to buy it so you can watch it over and over, and it is just amazing. It's amazing. One thing I want you to think about as you're watching Henry V, or as they say in England, Henry V, as you're watching this, I want you to think this is, of course, a Shakespearean account. I think his histories are underrated. This is just marvelous. And he is writing so that the glory of Henry V will transfer to be the glory of Elizabeth, Gloriana, and getting everyone that much more behind their great queen, who has had some difficulties and will have even more. So please watch this. Watch Henry V. Think about doing Edward the Black Prince or the Order of the Garter as one of your lives or two of your lives. They are fabulous topics, and they are very romantic topics, and not in the sense of romance, but in the sense of great heroic tales, and you just can't get any better. So I hope that this goes well, and I will have another follow-up based on the notes that I have for you, and I will send you the notes. So we're getting at the eve of the tutors as the class winds down, and I hope you have completed your book about the children of Henry VIII. If you have any questions about any materials or how to proceed with your research, let me know. And I'll look forward to hearing from you, and I'll be back in touch with you soon. Thanks so much.